To me, it's a very important visit. It's about coming to the overseas territories. Because in the end, Parliament passes bills which affects people in overseas territories. And I want to build that family relationship, that understanding. And what a privilege it's been for me today, just to say, to speak in the Cayman Parliament. It is very moving and it means so much to me to have that ability to share a platform with Mr. Speaker in his Parliament.
Hello and welcome to our CIG television interview with Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons, UK Parliament, and Sir Alden McLaughlin, Speaker of the Cayman Islands Parliament. I'm Donna Bush and I'm so glad that you could be here with us this afternoon. Speakers Hoyle and Speaker McLaughlin, thank you for being here with us for this interview this evening. Sir Lindsay, can we start by discussing some points about how you hope to achieve or what you hope to achieve by this visit?
To me, it's a very important visit. It's about coming to the overseas territories. Because in the end, Parliament passes bills which affects people in overseas territories. And I want to build that family relationship, that understanding. And by going around each of the overseas territories, I get a better understanding, witness what's happening, get a feel for the family, what matters to the people here, what matters to me, and having that dialogue. And of course, we know that the hurricane came through. Now, it didn't do the damage that it had done previously, but it was about having a relationship with different people and trying to talk to people about how did it affect you. We know what happened last time. This time it wasn't as bad, but it's about that pure understanding, about how you were able to help other people, your neighbours. And I think that's what really mattered to me. And being here, understanding and meeting the Speaker, meeting Parliament, and what a privilege it's been for me today, just to say, to speak in the Cayman Parliament. It is very moving and it means so much to me to have that ability to share a platform with Mr. Speaker in his Parliament.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sir Alden, what do you hope to achieve by Sir Lindsay's visit?
Well, first, I want to thank him very much for initiating the visit and for reaching out to the overseas territories. We've known each other for quite some time. I was elected about 3 years after he was first elected. And we've met each other over the years many times. But what he said is absolutely right about building relationships with real people in the overseas territories and in the UK. It's much easier to persuade people to do something or to help you in some way if they know who you are, if they know your face, rather than some nameless faceless individual at the end of a phone. So that is important, but it's also very important, I believe, for us in the overseas territories to continue to try to build capacity. We're losing more and more of the institutional knowledge in parliaments across the region, indeed across the world, because voters are increasingly impatient with representatives, and so there's a big turnover at almost every election. But while you move people out that you didn't want, you're also losing a lot of institutional knowledge about the business of Parliament, how Parliament runs. And as far as the role of the Speaker is concerned, how critically important it is that the Speaker understands what it is he or she is doing, and they understand the principles and the importance of impartiality and independence and fairness in administering the business of Parliament. Because once the Speaker loses the confidence of the representatives, really, it's time to quit, because he or she can no longer do the job properly. So I found, I'm a baby speaker, I call myself, because I've never been speaker before, but I'm towards the end of my 6th term in this Parliament, and I've worried quite a bit as I go across overseas territories in recent years at, quite frankly, how little so many know about how to operate a Parliament, and to ensure that everyone on both sides of the House have a fair opportunity to speak frankly about the matters that concern them, which are the matters usually that concern the people who elected them in the first place.
Sir Lindsay, the issue of security is significant for you. How do you believe that parliaments can prioritise this?
First of all, you're absolutely right. To have two MPs murdered carrying out the duties in the United Kingdom, and the fact that we had an attack on Parliament as well, where our policeman, our village policeman, was murdered defending democracy. Now, what we would say is that we can strengthen Parliament, but we've got to make sure we can protect MPs outside Parliament, their offices, their staff, their family. And the knowledge that we built up, I believe in sharing that knowledge. I want to know what the best practice is. So of course, while I'm here, I want to be able to talk to Mr. Speaker. What are the issues here? How can we help each other with security? What can we learn from each other? We know that social media is fantastic, but it's also very, very dangerous. People can be inspired through social media. The effect that social media can have to say, why don't we attack that MP? Do you know where this MP lives? Those are the kind of things that we've got to be aware of as well. So it's about working together, sharing the best of that knowledge and putting in place absolutely the best security we can. We put a lot of security around members of Parliament, around the families, around their offices, as well as the House of Commons. So it's about keeping people safe. We're only as good as protecting democracy as the next generation that's going to come through. We cannot allow those who don't share our values, don't share our principles. They will always fight. They think the answer is through threats, intimidation, bullying. And what we've got to say is, no, we all unite because we have one thing in common. We might be politically divided, but we are united in making sure that democracy survives. And that's why security matters so much to me.
Sir Lindsay, you're interested in seeing how the Cayman Islands Regiment as well as Hazard Management Cayman Islands operate. Could you explain that interest?
My interest in the armed forces goes back a long way. One of the biggest recruitment areas in the United Kingdom is the Northwest, is where I'm from, and Lancashire in particular, local regiments. I had the privilege of being the honorary colonel with the 3 Medical Regiment and also the squadron at Chorley. You know, so my interest has always been there, supporting the people who put their lives. Because in the end, it's Parliament that decides their future. You know, it's not an easy thing to say we go to war, but it's much easier if you're not on the battlefront. And I've got to say, I take that very seriously. When we commit people to war, we commit what they do. We should have a greater understanding of what the armed forces do for the United Kingdom. And I always say to people, please, you can go on to comment as a member of Parliament, spend days with the military, whether that's the Air Force, the Army, or the Navy. Please, bed yourself in with them, get an understanding, so you know what conditions they're living in, what effect you will have on them when you make votes in Parliament. So it's about doing the right thing, get an understanding, and then when you vote, at least it's informed, and it's about learning about what our military does for the United Kingdom.
Okay. Sir Lindsay, you are also interested in the Cayman Islands environment and sustainability issues. Can you share with us why?
I've got to say, you know, I look at this and think, this is Robinson Crusoe to me. Beautiful golden sands, wonderful people, and the fact that you've got some beautiful reefs as well. And it's about protecting, isn't it? It's about how do we protect the wildlife as well. You know, on land, as I said earlier, the blue iguana. I can go anywhere in the world, but there's only one place where I'm going to see a blue iguana, and that's here in the Cayman. So that unique species is something special that you protected. It was so endangered, but now it's coming back. You know, it's there for everyone to see. You know, that in itself is something very special that we've got to learn from. But of course, it is about your reefs around. It is about the sea and the quality of sea. And what we've got to remember is that industrial nations around the world, that global warming affects the smaller nations most, especially islands like yourself. Low land is always going to be a problem with rising water. And I've got to say, as we've seen south and the North Pole beginning to melt, we've seen the glaciers melting, that has a big impact. What is the impact? So it's about the environmental impact that we all need to work on. This isn't a problem for the United Kingdom. It is a problem for the Cayman. This is a world problem. It's a problem we come together. What we can't do is work independently, which is good, but united, we can begin to fight global warming and the environmental disaster that will affect a lot of the Commonwealth and the overseas territories. So I really do appreciate coming over here, seeing what's going on, seeing what's happening. It is amazing. And I've got to say, your understanding of the marine environment matters to me, because I can then share that knowledge to other overseas territories when I go around.
Okay, thank you for that. Sir Lindsay, the role of Speaker is an old one. How has this role, from your perspective, changed in today's modern, connected society?
Very good question. I'm the 158th Speaker, 800 years, whatever, there's been quite a few of us before. I suppose people say his speakership was certainly a one-off, to say the least. The fact that when I became Speaker, the biggest issue that was affecting Parliament was Brexit. The moment I became Speaker, there was an election, so I could have been the shortest Speaker in history. And then we went into Brexit. But that fell away because the pandemic came. So I was a Speaker that had been there for the pandemic. And the House of Commons has almost got 1,000 years of the way we do things. Nothing ever changes. Well, I've got to tell you, they had 48 hours in which I wanted to hold the government to account. And that meant changing the way that Parliament worked. So MPs were working remotely all over the United Kingdom, coming up on Teams. It was quite amazing. And allowing them to scrutinise the Prime Minister rather than standing down in Downing Street with no scrutiny. That cannot be right in a democracy. So it was about changing Parliament to adapt. And of course, the one thing that I did do, which affected the whips to end, I brought in remote voting. Well, the problem for the whips and the political parties was MPs were beginning to think for themselves, oh, I don't think I like that, I'm going to vote this way. The whips came knocking at my door. Mr. Speaker, we are not having any more remote votes. We've got to stop it now. But what we did do was brought in an automatic voting system. Instead of going through and somebody puts a line through your name, you now can vote, and we turn the votes around within minutes. The way that we treat people in the House of Commons, I hope my speakership will do, whether that's the medical support, the health and well-being I've brought in, the fact we have doctors, if people are suffering with mental health, I'm there to help everybody. And the fact, as we touched on before, making sure that security is the best that we can provide. So I think my speakership will be built on those changes. Tradition we've got there, I've been wearing the robes, but it's also about making sure we have an effective, modern Parliament, but recognising the traditions that go with it.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir Alden, I know you consider yourself to be the baby Speaker, but how do you feel the role has changed in today's modern, connected society?
I think it's gotten more challenging, not just in Cayman, but around the world, because politics seems to be getting more and more extreme. And unfortunately, civil behavior is one of the things that is lost. I watch the way people behave in parliaments all over the place. I'm a student of politics, no matter how hard I try to avoid it, and so I like to watch what happens in other places. And so it gets harder because there's less and less respect for authority. I see it here. The way some members speak to other members is not something that I am used to, and it's certainly not the way it was even 10, 15 years ago. So the role of a speaker, I think, has become almost more fatherly. I was relating very much to what Sir Lindsay was saying about looking out for the interests of the members of Parliament, and particularly some of the younger ones, more brash ones, having a quiet word about, I hear what you're trying to achieve, and it's a laudable goal, but we can't go about it that way. How about you try it this way? So my almost 24 years here, even though I haven't sat in that chair, I've like to think I've learned a thing or two about the way Parliament should work. And I visited parliaments in other places in the world, and I watched the UK Parliament almost every day. So
Thank you very much for that. Sir Lindsay, you are a vocal advocate for the overseas territories. How have you been able to promote the territories to your colleagues in House of Commons?
To me, it matters that here we have non-representation of the overseas territories in the House. You look at France, they become part of metropolitan France, same with Spain, same with the Dutch Antilles. They have direct representation, so they have a voice in the Parliament. And the thing is, we haven't got that. So who is going to speak up for the overseas territories? When decisions are being made, how can we ensure that there is representation? Now, I've always been of opinion, and it is always up to the overseas territories. I believe that you should also have people who represent you in the UK Parliament to speak up for you. But as that's not happened, I want to make sure that you are being looked after, that we can bring in the ministers, that we can have the Speakers' Conference, that we can ensure that access is there to members of Parliament. By having your own office to work from, I think makes a big difference as well. So if you want a meeting, you're not sat on a bench in a cafe within Parliament, you can say, well, come to our office. You know, and I think that really does matter to me. It's about making sure that you're looked after, that we can get the best representation we can. But as I say, you know, I would always welcome an MP from the Cayman Islands sat on the green benches. You know, to me, that would be quite amazing. Not only would it bring that effective voice straight in, you know, Mr. Speaker's had quite a few jobs, but here's another great job he might wish to take up. But, you know, obviously it's not for me to say, but I would always welcome that. If there was a desire by the overseas territories to have direct representation into the Commons. But I would say, in the meantime, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to ensure that you have a speaker that cares, that believes in the overseas territories, and make sure wherever it needs a door to be pushed open, I'm there to push that door open.
So what topics would you say are most prevalent about the overseas territories as far as the UK MPs are concerned?
Well, one could be security. We know there's been issues. There's a gun culture coming across the Caribbean. We've seen drugs that have got a big influence. The fact that crime doesn't just stay in London. It moves out of New York, moves out of London, and it goes into the overseas territory. So it's about giving that support and protection. Cyber security is sharing our knowledge on cyber, which has a big impact. We know that for a full weekend we had an attack from a foreign actor, foreign nation, trying to bring down Parliament. And of course, we were lucky, we could defend it. But they moved the target. It doesn't stop at London. It could be Cayman next week. It could be the Isle of Man the week after. So it's about working together to help protect and supporting each other and making sure that we can put those facilities in. And as the hurricane comes through, you know, the French have a base here. Well, maybe we ought to be having a base in the overseas territories. You know, I've spoken to the Secretary of State for Defence. I speak to the Minister of State in the Foreign Office saying, look, you know, it takes us a week to 10 days to get here. We should be here already. And let's look at ways to be more effective and ensuring. You know, it's good to see we've got the Trent class at the moment that's based here, but we could build on that. And who knows, why aren't we using part of the overseas territories for training facilities? We don't need to go to Belize. We could use our family to help train our troops in the future. And as we know, you know, this is a great recruitment ground across the Caribbean of troops that come and sign up for the UK. So wouldn't it be nice to have a base back in the Caribbean as well, on a permanent basis? So I think there's so much I can offer and so much I can do to make sure that the family is being looked after.
Sir Lindsay, you've served as a representative of your constituents for a long time. How are you finding the role of Speaker in comparison, and what strengths do you believe that this role uniquely requires?
Well, I'm very lucky because I've been elected in my area since 1980 without a break, and the people have kept putting the trust in me. You know, and I always say this, I'm the MP for Chorley first, I'm the Speaker second. So I can't be the Speaker without being an MP. So my constituents really do matter. But it allows me to use influence from my constituency as Speaker. You know, in fairness, if I want to see a Prime Minister, I don't go to the Prime Minister comes to see me. Same with Foreign Secretaries and Ministers, that's the big advantage. And, you know, it's an absolute privilege that I've got that open door access to the people who make the decisions. You know, I've just managed to get a 20 million redevelopment for our town centre. You know, I've got that through. Disability access at the railway station. I'm looking for a new high school. I'm looking to build a brand new hospital. I'm in awe of what you've done here in the Cayman Islands. I went past a new hospital. So, you know, I'm saying these are the things that I still have to deliver for the people of Chorley. So they put the trust in me. And while that trust is there, I'm always going to deliver for Chorley first.
So what are you most looking forward to in your visit here?
Talking to people, and people matter to me. And of course, speaking to Mr. Speaker, being in Parliament, that is absolutely, I've got to tell you, an absolute privilege for me to be part of this Parliament today. But it's the people who live here as well, and going around meeting people, seeing what's going on, an economy that continues to grow. You know, this is a flag bearer of all overseas territories. You know, let's remember that. You know, you are a pathfinder for others to follow. And what happens here, we need to be able to replicate, because it's an amazing story. It's a big transition. You know, it's a long time since I was last here. New buildings have gone up, new hospitals. It's all happening. And people want to live here. Why? Because of the quality of life. And I'm going to say, what a beautiful place to live. So, you know, that's the part of what I want to do. Meet people, talk to people, and get a real feel for the true Cayman Island.
All right. So, Sir Alden, what are some of the things you would like Sir Lindsay to see and learn about Cayman while he's here?
Oh, there's a long list. They've cut it down a great deal because there just isn't time. But meeting our people. So the reception this evening will provide an opportunity for that. The gala dinner will provide another opportunity for that. We'll be visiting the regiment, visiting the Girl Guides, the Boy Scouts. So you get some of the youth and the youth parliamentarians. So you get some of the input and perspectives of younger people. But there are a number of places that he won't get to see on this visit, which I would have loved him to get to see. But like Crystal Caves, which I think is just absolutely amazing. I had to get that cut off the list, but it just takes too far away, it takes too long. But he's going for a helicopter ride right around the island. We're going to take him up to Pedro St. James, as they call it these days, and to see where that famous meeting, fundamental meeting as far as Cayman's democracy is concerned, took place on New Year's Eve, 1831. You know, when the first elections took place. So we're going to take him to see some of those things, and I think they have a few other things on the list, but we hope he can get a flavor of Cayman through its people, through our places of significance. Hope he can get to see the one of the blue iguana, maybe the one that Prince Charles, as he then was so famously was photographed with. It went all over the world. I think he's still around out up there. So yeah, we want him to take away a real flavor of the people and of this place, and to reinforce, though it probably needed no reinforcement, of our commitment to democratic principles and to the Crown.
Okay. Speaker Hoyle, Speaker McLaughlin, it's been a pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you. Yes, thank you as well, and thank you to our viewers for watching.